Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSC Squared Podcast. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the PBSC Podcast. Steve Moore and Mark Castleman coming to you today with episode 297. I'm picturing like thunder striking right now and the dun, dun, dun. Almost 300 episodes, people.
Yeah.
Super exciting. We appreciate your patronage and you being here and excited to, I don't know what we're going to do for the 300th episode, but we're going to have to do something. So anyway, happy to be here with all of you. Episode is titled, and based on a submission from an addict, actually, this week, which we always appreciate. And this is the title: Everyone thinks he's great, but they don't know the whole story. So I guess technically we could have changed the title to Everyone Thinks I'm Great, but they don't know the whole story.
Right. Yeah. If you were from the addict's perspective. Yeah, exactly.
So we're gonna read this, and we do want you to know, just going into here, we really appreciate any time an addict writes in. We know you guys carry a lot of shame. We know that even listening to this podcast, I mean, it was a decade ago, but it's still not nearly long enough for Mark and I to remember, what it was like to be in early recovery or even not in recovery. And just listening to a podcast episode like this would have probably been like emotional root canal.
Exactly.
To say nothing of actually looking up their website and writing in. So we just really honor and appreciate that guy willing to do this. But here we go. It's not long, so I'm going to read it. First, I wanted to say thank you for the podcast. It's been a great source of knowledge and got me on the right track very early in my recovery. I've been with my girlfriend for just over a year. And you are welcome, by the way. We're glad that you're listening. I've been with my girlfriend for just over a year, and my porn addiction came out 2 months into our relationship. I immediately installed filtering devices, got into therapy, and I've been listening to one episode of the PBSC podcast a day as a part of my recovery. My recovery has been very successful and our relationship is much stronger now. Through my newfound honesty, we've developed a connection deeper than I've ever felt before. It's just awesome to hear.
It is awesome.
He goes on to say, I do have one question, but I haven't listened to every episode yet, so I'm sorry if you've already covered this. Have you worked with any partners that have felt triggered by compliments to the addict? My friends or my girlfriend's friends will compliment me sometimes, or compliment me in her presence or, me in front of her, saying something like, quote unquote, he's so great, or quote unquote, he's such a nice guy. My girlfriend agrees and does believe that, but afterwards is upset by the fact that she knows the harmful things that I've also done, while those friends are unaware of my betrayal and the trauma she's been working through. She struggles with feelings like, quote, even the good ones can do harmful things, unquote, and, quote, sometimes it's who you least expect, unquote. Do you have any advice for either of us when these situations come up? It's a great submission. It's really, really good.
Really, really well done by the addict. I mean, I have some really personal things to say about this. I was raised in an environment like is being described. So I had a series of stepfathers, and all of those stepdads were exceptionally good at this process. They would put on a public face, but behind the walls of our home, they were very different people. And these guys were very charismatic. They were very, very popular, very well spoken, great storytellers. One of the guys, and everywhere that we would go in our community, we would hear accolades for these men in my life, these stepdads. Man, you're so lucky to have him as your dad. He's one of the greatest men I've ever known. I mean, we just go on and on and on. And it had a really difficult impact, I remember, on me. I felt there were a number of emotions that I felt. I felt anger towards my stepdads because I could see they were putting on a show for those out there in public, but they weren't behaving that way with us behind the scenes. I felt very neglected. Like, okay, those people out there get the best side of this guy, but what do I get? How is that fair? I also felt very inadequate and shamed. Why do they have these amazing friendships with this awesome side of my stepdad, but I don't? He doesn't care enough about me to be that way when he's around here. There must be something horribly wrong with me because they all have this great thing. I don't. Right? There's just a sea of emotions that I can really relate to with this betrayed partner that he's expressing.
Yeah.
You can just imagine how she feels. Like there's part of it says, yeah, you're right. He is a nice guy. He's a great guy. Yeah, that's why I'm with him. I see all those things.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see the other side. And so there's a feeling of loneliness. I'm alone in this. Am I the only one that sees it? Why am I so, quote, special? It's a difficult position.
Yeah. Well, and I really appreciate you, Mark, bringing that side of it up because even though it's not mentioned in this submission, we know that for many partners, the impact can be similar to what you just described, right? This idea of it's almost like there's an element of unintentional gaslighting, like what's wrong with
Mm-hmm.
me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like maybe I'm the problem. Crap, everybody sees this guy and he's like walks on water. Like, am
Yep.
I just, a prude? Am I just, expecting too much? And guess who tragically oftentimes, and it doesn't sound like this guy is, which is great, but who too oftentimes reinforces those ideas? Us, the addicts. If you were just more sexual, if you were just more this, if you really are expecting a lot in this relationship, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
I
we are
get along
one
with
we
everyone else. What's your
totally.
problem?
Totally. So we can oftentimes unwittingly or intentionally feed into that. So that's a great point to bring up. And even if that gaslighting piece isn't present, right? So many partners we know, just like this one, there's an element of resentment or frustration. And I think it's important to talk about why. Why would that be the case? And this will hopefully be good for this guy or helpful for this guy who's listening, but also for any other guys as well as partners. A couple of things that I think this brings up that we see with partners on a frequent basis, and this, like Mark, this same thing happened with me in my relationship with my wife. Um, the first one I think that it brings up, in addition to that gaslighting piece, is there is this real element of feeling like I, as a partner, me speaking for partners, right? Because I've heard this a lot. I can't be my full self,
Oh, yeah.
right? We go to these situations, and sometimes it's not even just with friends, right? It can even be with family members or whatever. And even if the compliments aren't raining down, like is in this example, what oftentimes am I faced with? I'm faced with this dilemma of I kind of am supporting this narrative that may not feel authentic to me,
Yeah.
right? Or this idea, or I'm trying to be real with people that I love or that I care about, but I'm not being real about the most important, vulnerable, hard things. Because so much of what we cultivate in relationships with other people is in what? The commiseration, the sharing, the receiving support for what? Huge obstacles, challenges, things that
Well,
we're facing.
and Steve, we've been spending the last 2 weeks in our Dare to Connect program, which we invite all of you to come and join with us. We'd love to have you, about why we go into defensive communication strategies to be safe. This would be an example of one of those that we've talked about over the last couple of weeks in our intimate sessions with all of our subscribers. If my addict partner, or my partner that doesn't behave in totally healthy ways and engages in these acts of betrayal, we would say, I have a partner who lives. Hey, he has his own secret sexual basement he
Yeah.
lives in, and nobody else knows that he lives in this secret sexual basement when he's at home. but I do. And so when he's out there putting on the facade or acting in all these wonderful charismatic ways, I feel pressured that I also need to put on a happy face.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
otherwise, what have I seen? How you've seen this too, Steve. When partners start to find their voice and start to speak their truth, what will often happen from the people around them? She will start to, express her trauma and show truly what's going on. They see him, the near perfect guy, and then where does the boom get dropped on? Her.
Yeah.
What's wrong with her? She's so negative. She's so pessimistic. She's such a downer. Man, does
Because
she
she's being real about the feelings, but not about the causes.
yeah, she's so
Right.
lucky to be married to that guy. Does she not know what she has? She's the one that ends up catching all the flack for it because of the
Why
contract.
is she so paranoid when they go to the pool? What's her deal? Like, why
What's
is she
wrong with
such a
her?
prude? Like, why is she
Right.
being like that? Right.
Yeah. Why does she seem like she's mad at him? Why does she go
Mhm.
silent? She's depressed.
Yeah.
Right. We see this punishment that's coming from people who don't have anything remotely close to the facts.
Yeah. So when we talk about the secret sexual basement, even though this isn't a concept that we have heard described, in clinical settings, I guess we could just coin one right now. Maybe she has maybe she has a betrayal trauma addict, right?
The
That
addict,
she's
like yeah, they're like the addict of the house, the
Yeah,
upstairs.
like an addict of a house, right? Like I've got my own space that I kind of operate in that nobody really knows about. And
Mhm.
it's very frustrating and I feel misunderstood.
Mhm.
I feel mischaracterized. So what happens, right? What if we were to kind of summate this up? Partners find themselves in this unenviable position when this dynamic is present to some degree of I'm either being inauthentic in how I express myself, right? Or I'm authentic in how I express myself and then with a fear or a risk of being judged in a distorted way because again it's like being judged for the crime with no understanding of what happened,
Exactly, exactly.
right?
And the great challenge in this, and I can relate to this from growing up as a kid. Every time I heard people praise those dysfunctional, unhealthy, in some ways abusive men in my life, those compliments that they would receive were huge triggers for me.
Mm-hmm.
Huge triggers, right? Because what did it say? Their positive comment about these men that I knew behind the scenes was a painful spotlight on my hidden wounds all of a sudden.
Yep.
Every time a compliment would come, it was like somebody poured salt in my wounds.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, right? And none of them knew what was going on. None of
That's a
them.
great way of putting it.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
was
and
this,
then,
yeah,
so
it
you
was
can
this,
see the disparity here,
yeah, it's this
right? I mean,
gap
there's a
between outside perception and inside reality. Huge
mm-hmm,
gap.
for sure.
And it was hard. Yeah. And
Yeah. Well, and this idea that these so often in these situations, and there are lots of reasons why this happens, right? Because it is not always, well, we're the first to tell you, it's not always appropriate for a coupleship like this to wear, their entire history on their sleeve,
I would agree.
right? There are lots of in which that legitimately is inappropriate. We work with couples all the time where everything from jobs to security clearances to all sorts of things can be put at potential risk if those things were to come to light, especially in a distorted, incomplete fashion, right? It may not be safe for a variety of reasons,
Well,
but it does. Oh, go ahead.
can I say something about someone say, well, then how can there be transparency? I'll tell you how I balanced that. I started sharing with family members and friends, not the deep issues of my pornography and sexual addiction, because in many ways it wasn't appropriate to do so. But I'll tell you what I did share with them. I shared with them that I have had mental illness challenges in my life. I started sharing that I've had some issues with depression or anxiety. My wife's been through a lot of really trying things as we've worked together for me to become more healthy with regard to a lot of childhood abuse issues that I suffered from. So I
Mm-hmm.
would be more open about the fact that I wasn't the perfect guy, that I had issues and struggles and traumas and things, and that my wife was, I'd say she's the biggest hero in my entire life about how she stood by my side through some incredibly hard stuff. I didn't
Well,
get into details about what the hard stuff was, but people knew, wow, that woman's been through something. I don't know what Mark's talking about exactly, but wow, we never knew. We never knew
mhm.
he'd been through stuff like that, right? That's just an example
Yeah.
of how I started to become more transparent. Hey, everybody, PBSC podcast hosts Mark and Steve here with a special message about our revolutionary online recovery program for addict spouses and couples called Dare to Connect. Multiple times every week, we get messages from subscribers in the program. They're people just like you. They're trying to heal from the devastation of sex and porn addiction and betrayal trauma. And here's a few of our most recent submissions. Here's one from an addict in recovery. It says, D2C has principles that everyone should utilize regardless of their circumstances. It doesn't matter your coping mechanisms. It matters that you want to work towards genuine connection with your partner.
That's awesome. Another testimony from an addict continues on. My wife is just starting out in training as a licensed therapist. Dare to Connect has been far more useful to her than her degree.
Wow.
The way Mark and Steve apply what they've learned is always so redemptive. D2C has opened doors for my relationship that I thought would be shut forever. Mark and Steve are an incredible resource of information on the subject of sex addiction and betrayal trauma. We could not do this journey without their help.
Here's one from a partner who's been with us for nearly a year. I want you both to know that it is because of you guys and D2C that I'm able to be in the place that I am today. I will always be grateful to you both for your feedback and prompt replies to my questions. I can't even come close to putting it into words how valuable my time spent with y'all this past year has been to my life. Thank you for everything you taught me about betrayal trauma and boundaries and thinking errors and loving myself and making myself a priority and standing up for myself.
Love that. Love that submission. And then as we close out here today, guys, one more account from another addict in recovery. I wish I had a platform like this 14 years ago where I could have learned and done the hard work of recovery before I had done all this damage to myself and to my spouse. And to be candid with all of you, that's exactly why we created Dare to Connect. Mark and I found ourselves in that place. Messages like these and the others like them, they're what Dare to Connect really is all about, guys, and why Mark and I do what we do. Whether you're an addict or a partner of an addict, and no matter where you find yourself in the recovery process, Dare to Connect can take you to the next level. Don't wait another day to catapult your recovery forward. Today is your day for change. Visit us at daretoconnectnow.com to pick up your free 2-week trial of Dare to Connect today. Well, and we are admittedly jumping a little bit ahead in the solutions here, but since we're here, talking about this is really relevant because every situation looks a little different. I distinctly remember there was a time where my acting out on the emotional outcomes of it, frankly, were confusing the hell out of my siblings and their spouses.
Yeah, me too.
There were different. We would get together as a family frequently, and either we would have boundaries that would seem odd, or we wouldn't be able to make it last minute or whatever. And it was causing a lot of problems. And I could tell that even though despite my best efforts for it not to be, my sibling, I think it's easy and it's natural for a sibling to think, well, I know my sibling, so maybe it's something going on with their partner. And I had a real fear, and I think some of that was real, that part of this, whether it was intended or not, was starting to be kind of labeled on the blamable. Something must be going on with Brittany, right? That's why this stuff is happening, which just was an injustice on top of so many other injustices. Thankfully, I was at a point in recovery where I remember my brother-in-law brought up in a conversation something that his wife, my sister, had shared, and I actually just kind of lost it. Not on him or in a bad way, but I said, that's it. I didn't even know I could do this, but I just decided to on the fly. I said, we're having a family meeting. And I sent out a text to everybody. I said, me and Brittany need to chat with all of you. When can we meet? And this is not the kind of thing that is typical in my family, so I think it was kind of an outside the thing. But we sat down, and I didn't do this in the most thought out way, but it just needed to happen. And I remember sitting down and I just got very emotional with my siblings. They're all sitting there. And I said, look, I know a lot of you have noticed. I keep hearing, kind of the scuttlebutt that that some things are going on with Brittany and I. And they said, and you're not wrong. There are. There are things going on with Brittany and I, but they're not things that we're at a point where we're ready to share. They have to do specifically with me and issues that I am dealing with, which I think at the time probably all but confirmed to my family what was going on. But I said, but they're things that I am working through and that we're working through. And we would just really appreciate if you could give us some space and some grace around it.
I love that.
And those conversations and it brings and my perspective along with Mark brings up kind of something we wanted to definitely cover here is every relationship looks different. The concerns behind sharing and what to share and how look very different. In fact, in early recovery, I'll be transparent with you in 12 step and in other circles, therapists being among them, the guidance is very clear. Be extremely cautious about what you share because sharing in the world that we live in now is a one-way street. And that is truer than it's ever been. When you share something with family or friends about what's going on in a couple's dynamic, you basically just have to plan on and assume that what would be the worst case scenario if this just got out to everyone? Because inevitably that's probably what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And Mark and I had many discussions about that before we published our first book, The Pornography Paradox. You can be damn sure we had these discussions. It was like, wow, there's no going back on this one.
We're putting
This
ourselves out
genie will never go back in the bottle. Right.
there. Right.
So
Right, but
whatever else,
I love how
go
you
ahead.
approached your family, Steve. It shows that it doesn't have to be this all or nothing proposition.
We get to decide that on
Yeah.
the slider gauge of how much are we going to share.
Yeah, there are
Right.
levels. It's not about being on it, not being honest or being honest. No, honesty needs to be appropriate. It needs to be measured out and engaged with at levels appropriate to the relationships that we're involved with.
Yes.
The more Brene Brown, I love one of Brene Brown's statements in her work. She says you only share your deepest, most intimate story with those who have earned the right to hear it,
Yep.
to receive it. Right? There's a lot to be said for that. Now, as I illustrated, there are ways to still be honest, but at lower levels, right? I'm still being honest. Like you said, Steve, yes, there are things going on. They have to do with me. We're not ready to really delve into those right now. And we would appreciate if you would give us space and grace. And right, what did you put on the table? Yep, there's something going on with me and Brittany, and it's primarily me, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
And I would do the same thing. Yeah, there's stuff going on here, guys, and it's primarily me, Mark. I'm not ready to share other details with you, but you need to know that. That
Yep.
goes a long way.
You're not crazy. You're not out of your mind. Brittany's not weird. You're the percept. There really is
Yeah,
something going on.
my partner's not the devil, right? She's not just this crazy person, There's a lot more going on here than you know.
Yeah.
And so you are being honest and divulging information, but it isn't an all or nothing thing.
Guys, when it comes to disclosure, and this brings up an important topic, and it doesn't just apply when it comes to your addiction story, it applies across the board in a coupleship, right? Because and I wanted and we need to talk about this because whether you're in our D2C program for addicts, spouses, and couples, daretoconnectnow.com, 2-week free trial. I'd love to have you guys come join us. Or whether you're listening to our podcast or you're one of our clients in our individual clinics, we preach. There are people who probably listen to this who run drinking games around how often Steve or Mark say authentic self in a
We say it a
podcast or
lot,
in a lecture. We say it a ton.
a ton.
Authenticity is the founding principle on much of what we do because whatever else an addict is, they're one thing. They're living a secret life, right? That no matter what the case is, until they, and as long as the secrecy is present, healing can't really come about in whatever ways that needs to be corrected. Now, having said that, I heavily agree with Brene Brown's perspective that Mark shared. And there are when you picture disclosure, we talk this is how we teach in the DDC program. Picture like a radio with two dials, right? You've got authenticity, which is the dial that we believe firmly should always remain high. But then there's the other dial, which consists of detail and depth,
Mhm.
right? I should always be real. There have been times, transparently speaking, where I have been absent from from a family gathering with my in-laws because I've been sick. And that's what I've told them. I am sick. I'm sick to death of you weirdos and how mean you are to me. That's what I'm sick of, right? I really am. But is the dynamic in that relationship, or was it back then safe enough to transparently discuss those things? No, it wasn't,
Mhm.
because it would open up the door to conflict, not just for me, but it would put my partner in a position
Yeah.
of discord with her family, which she has already been through enough,
Yeah.
right? And these were not people who were safe to be that straight, that deep with,
Yeah.
right? And so transparency is critical, but again, or you have to be discerning in terms of what is safe, what is not, and what is not going to do harm, right?
Yes. Yes.
To my partner or to other people. And so keep that in mind as we're having that discussion. We want to make that super clear for everyone because we know that's a huge premise of what we talk about.
No, I'm glad this addict wrote into us because he's really reaching out what we consider to be authentic and really wanting to have answers. This is a very advanced approach that I'm about to share, but I will tell you that it has made all the difference for me becoming a more authentic and outward, everything on the table kind of person, and also to my wife's sense of self and confidence and our relationship. And it's this. I have tried and I'm still working, I still work on it every day, and some days are better and some days are not. I try to be very mindful when we're out and about, and I try to observe and watch what's happening. And so, for example, if somebody gives me a compliment and builds me up and my wife is there, what would be a proactive thing that I could do after that exchange? It would be to sit down with her quietly and say to her, "Hey, sweetheart, I can imagine how that compliment that was just given to me would be really hard for you to hear.
Yes, absolutely.
That compliment may have really stung for you. Can you share with me what you felt when you heard them saying that in light of what you know is the full true history?" Do you see how I'm not waiting to react to something that happens. I'm proactively noticing and intuiting and preempting and asking about it. Now, as an addict, I would never have done such a thing in a billion years. I would run as far away from conflict or confrontation or hearing or owning hard things. I'd run as fast and as far as I could get. Now I tried to actually volunteer it. Hey, you know what? Was that hard for you to hear that? I know it would have been for me if I was somebody married to me and had been through the history I put you through. What was that like?
Mm.
I want to engage that way, right? So practicing this accountability, practicing this transparency, practicing this proactivity and offering things up even when they're not asked for. It's a very advanced relationship strategy, but I highly recommend it if you can work your way towards it. Right, it's been a huge difference in our relationship and in my recovery and my healthy living to be that proactive and that transparent.
Absolutely, for sure. Well, and there are lots of ways to lead out in that, right? Leading out and having one of the most important pieces of this dialogue, whether you because there are multiple options that we've discussed in this podcast so far, right? Option number one is to really consider, right, and sit down and ask oneself as a coupleship, are we sharing an appropriate level of our story requisite with our recovery and where we're at and what we're both comfortable with in a way that balances the disparity that we're talking about here.
I like that. Yeah.
Are we doing it because there's a balance to be struck between those two, right? Mark and I obviously live, if we were to like, stipple graph out like the statistic Mark and I, we know we live on some random outlier. We have made a living in a profession off of saying, I'm Steve Moore, I'm a social worker, I'm a therapist, I own two businesses, and I am an addict in recovery.
Yeah.
Most people do not live that way, nor should they, right?
Right. Right.
But there is a navigable space where we want to be having ongoing discussion because the needs and the potential for this changes over time on both sides of the equation.
It
Brittany
does.
and I never would have shared parts of this story with anyone under any circumstance at one point in time.
Yeah.
But then as recovery evolved, trust developed, the relationship started to gain more stability, and both of us progressed in our individual recoveries, that started to shift, right?
Now
Um,
let me caution those of you out there who hear this as addicts. You say, you know what? I'm going to be honest and open and forthright from now on. And then you make a mistake on the other opposite end, which is running around and revealing everything before you've talked to your partner about how they feel about that and what's appropriate to share and with whom. This is not just you alone in sharing all of this about your past history. You have a partner who's also fully engaged in this, and she has something to say about what you share and with whom you share it. That should be openly discussed as a coupleship before, as I used to do, go around vomiting up my mouth to everyone.
mhm.
Right?
Yes.
And
And
talking with her about that.
well, you have to be super, and it is one of the many perils, especially early in recovery, right? Because there's so many dynamics at play. Addicts, for example, oftentimes experience, if you have studied recovery at all, you hear the term pink cloud thrown around a lot.
Oh yeah.
Where we get, where, for example, we get honest or real with somebody like our sponsor or something, and what do we feel? We feel freaking amazing. It's the first time we've been real with anybody. So what's the next natural inclination for an addict who just felt something awesome with absolutely no sense of boundaries? I'll just go tell the whole planet,
Yeah. Be real
right?
with everybody.
I mean, I should just tell this to everyone. I mean, if that felt good for one, this, right? But again, you have to be prudent with those kinds of things, especially in the age that we live in. Because the
Absolutely.
reality is, for example, once something makes it onto the internet, it never, ever leaves,
Permanent, right?
right? I will be known as an addict in long-term recovery 10 years from now, if anyone, 10 years after I die, if anyone even cares
Sure.
to Google me,
For sure.
right?
Yeah.
Like that will never stop. And so you have to just, and remember, it's not just your story, it's your partner's story. But
It
the big
is.
thing I think that is the most important as we wrap up the podcast is that addicts, we keep showing up with empathy, we keep showing up with kindness, and we do our very best to create a safe space and lead out in the discussion that should be ongoing that says, are we approaching this in a way that is meeting both of our needs right now?
And
Or are
and
we ready to
I
shift something?
and I'm going to say, can I, as an addict in recovery with the history I've put my partner through, can I help create an environment of safety where she can feel comfortable sharing the trigger openly with me?
Yeah.
Right? Hey, when I earlier today when I heard that compliment, I have to tell you that was hard for me because of this, and here's how it felt. Am I creating the environment where she can feel safe to do that? Now, does she need to find her voice and show the courage to do so? Yes. Can I also can both of us differentiate between what is true now and what was true then? Can we balance the history and the current situation? For example, a compliment comes, hey, he's a really great guy. Well, now he is. And can that reality exist with the fact that before he wasn't so much? And can I have both of those exist? Can we have both of those exist for us? Right? Creating that environment of authenticity and openness, right? Both of you journaling, engaging with support groups, getting the therapy that you need, understanding and bringing forth that hidden story on both of your parts, right? A lot going on here.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Well, guys, as always, we love and appreciate all of you. You could be doing so many things during the week or so many things in your life, and whether it was, during a free moment, or maybe it's just for entertainment value. Maybe some of you used to fall asleep to, which is understandable. My daughter likes to fall asleep to my voice, to say nothing of the content, which probably would do it as well. Whatever the case is, you take the time and you come here every week, and we appreciate all of you for being here. Thank you for being part of the audience. If you do like what you hear here, as always, we implore you to please come and join Dare to Connect. You will love Dare to Connect. If you like what happens here, you will love our program for addict spouses and couples. Let 2025 be the year when you just beat this thing. We know viscerally well what it's like to be caught kind of in that kind of syndrome,
Mm.
right? You kind of, as a YouTube video that I watched a while ago likes to say in pretty passionate terms, you kind of want to break free from addiction. You kind of want to heal your relationship. You kind of whatever. But as the person who made the video said, kinda is lethal. And I like that. Don't kinda this thing. Take your recovery to the next level. Come join us. Grab a 2-week free trial at daretoconnectnow.com. Hear what all the excitement is about and come find out for yourself how we can help level up your recovery. Whether you're at the very beginning stages or in a maintenance stage, we can take you to the next level. Daretoconnectnow.com. And for those who would like to send in submissions to the podcast, we're about a month behind in getting to those. And you really don't want to get answers like Wednesday, 2 days from now, when after this was recorded, which DDC would give you. You can definitely send those in, and we would love to hear from you at the same website, daretoconnectnow.com. Click on the PBSC podcast icon up at the top, and at the bottom of that page, there's a contact form. You can send those in to us too.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, thanks for being with us once again. Love and appreciate all of you. And we will look forward to our next episode.
Be safe, guys. Bye-bye. Everything expressed on the PBSC podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.